Woman, an in-depth exploration of the world of women today with Samantha Dean.
Good evening. I'm Sandra Elkin. I'm the producer of Woman. Samantha Dean is ill this evening, and I'll be filling in. Our subject tonight is alcoholism. My guests are Michael Merrick, who is the Educational Director of the Buffalo Area Council on Alcoholism. My other two guests are Jane and Agnes, who will be telling us of their personal experiences with alcoholism. They wish to remain anonymous, so you won't be able to see their faces. Welcome.
Thank you, Sandra.
And thank you for coming. Mike, how many women out of the 9 million alcoholics in the United States are women?
Sandra, the latest figures indicate that almost half of them, or roughly about 4 million of the alcoholics, are women alcoholics in the country today.
Is that on the uprise, or?
Yes, it is. The statistics indicate that if the trend is not stopped, every year we have another 250,000 alcoholics in the country.
Are more people using alcohol than drugs, or more drugs now than alcohol? There seemed to be a big trend toward drug users.
Yes, that's true as far as the publicity goes, but my experience, particularly working with kids, high school and college students, are that drugs seem to be on the decrease right now, and the in-drug still is alcohol, as it's been for generations. It's the most abused drug in the country today.
Agnes, can you give us a description of an alcoholic?
Well, Sandy, I'd say an alcoholic is a person that drinks to excess, and the drink tends to bring them downhill, makes them lose their job, makes them lose their sense of propriety. And also I want to let you know that an alcoholic isn't somebody that drinks a bottle, 2, 3, or 4. That doesn't mean an alcoholic. An alcoholic is a person that drinks and becomes something that he isn't. And it doesn't make any difference how many drinks he has, it's what the drink does to him. I would say at this point that alcoholism is a sickness, it's an allergy, and a person doesn't realize it till he's well into the drinking. And then they realize it when they have this terrific craving for alcohol. And the only thing that really helps them is another drink. So an alcoholic should never even take one drink. They say 1,000 isn't too many, but 1 is too much. That's what they say about an alcoholic, and it's true, because I found that out. 1 drink is too many, and 1,000 isn't enough.
Right. One of the things that Agnes just mentioned, Sandy, the idea of it doesn't make any difference how much you drink or what you drink. It really what it does to you. And probably the hallmark of someone who's becoming addicted to alcohol, and I'm sure Agnes and Jane both agree with this, is the idea of a person over a period of years does lose control over their intake of alcohol. And that's the real downward trend that Agnes is speaking about.
What does it feel like, Jane? What did you feel as an alcoholic?
Well, I felt remorse, guilt. I was ashamed. I knew I drank too much. I knew I lost control of my drinking, but yet I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know where to go. Being a wife and a mother, I was too ashamed. In our society, it's acceptable for a man to go out and have a few drinks and feel good. But when a woman does it, she's looked upon as, well, there's something wrong with her. She's a fallen woman, or she's evil. And this is what was in my mind. I knew I only drank at home. I never went out to drink. And yet, I knew I drank too much. But where to go? Who to go to? What to do? I started to drink, just having a few drinks before dinner. And in a couple years, I progressed into daily drinking.
In 2 years?
Yes, it didn't take me very long. Since coming into the program, I've learned that there are many people who had drank for 30 years. It only took me 2 years to get to where I was, and it took them 30.
You told me once that your father was an alcoholic.
Well, he was a very, very heavy drinker. We try not to judge people and say, well, point your finger at them and say you're an alcoholic. I could say, truthfully, that he did have a problem with alcohol. As a child, I hated alcohol because I saw what it did to my family, to my family life, and yet I was doing the same thing to my husband and my children. And the guilt alone and the fear of, what's the future going to hold? I used to get up in the morning and I used to shake, and I craved a drink. And it got to a point where I didn't want it anymore, but I needed it in order to function. And I didn't know what the word alcoholism meant. I think the fear of the word alcoholic turned me right off. To me, an alcoholic was a Skid Row bum, and I wasn't put in that category because I did drink at home, and I took care of my children, and I managed my house pretty well under the circumstances. It was amazing what I did. But, however, I was hospitalized for it, and after I came out of the hospital, I started to drink again.
Oh.
And
how long were you in the hospital?
For 8 days. Now, this was just a detoxification unit. In other words, their job was to sober me up, and this is what they did. Physically, I was fine when I came out, but mentally, I was just as confused as ever. It was hard for me to accept that I had a problem.
Did you want to know why? Did you want answers?
Oh, yes. I kept asking myself why. I never asked anybody else. I just asked myself, because, again, I was too ashamed to bring it up. And I felt that I brought shame onto my family. And so I just tried to keep asking myself why. And I never come up with a good reason. I had a lot of excuses. And I found this out when I came to AA. That's all these were just excuses, like the kids making you nervous, or having an argument with your husband, or money difficulties, things like that. And these are normal problems that normal people have,
right.
And I just couldn't cope with them.
Jane, one of the things you mentioned, the idea it was so difficult for you, say, to admit to the fact of being an alcoholic. I've always felt one of the reasons for that is, particularly if it's a woman involved who's having a problem with alcohol, just that social stigma attached to the word and to the person. And you mentioned before that it's the acceptable thing for, if a man is tense or he's having a problem on the job or at home, just to go to the local tavern and pop a few drinks. But for the woman, this is not an accepted type of thing. It was the woman who might drink to excess. It's not the accepted thing. So as a result, so frequently, she's going to do a lot of hidden, secret drinking at home.
This was my problem.
Yeah.
I hid everything. I hid all my bottles. I didn't want anybody to know.
Oh, would you tell that story that you told us
All right.
before?
Well, as my drinking progressed, I drank quite a bit. And, of course, I didn't realize how much I was drinking either. So I kept, because of this fear of people finding out, that I drank to excess, I just kept hiding all the bottles in my attic and never realizing that they just kept accumulating and accumulating. Well, there came a point where my husband was very angry. He wanted to know where the money was going, and he wanted to know just what was happening. So he did find out through books that I had kept for him that I did go out to the liquor store and buy my own liquor. And he never went through my belongings, but this one morning he did, and he found the 3 bottles that I had bought at the liquor store. And, of course, he was very, very angry, and he woke me up, and he wanted to know, why I was drinking. And I told him that I had a nervous condition, which I did at that point. And,
Getting caught?
Right. And my son, who was 9 at the time, got up from bed, and he heard all the yelling, and he had told my husband, he wanted to know what the yelling was about, and my husband had accused me, you know, of being a drunk, and, you know, of course he didn't understand alcoholism either. And my son didn't seem too upset, but he said, gee, he says, Daddy, he says, there's a lot more bottles upstairs. So when my husband started to empty out all the boxes, and by the way, he did line them up as to the progression of the disease. Now, when I first started to drink, my daily cocktail before dinner, it was Canadian Club. And then as you go along the line, as he lined them up, the brand was cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And there was a total of 286 bottles that I saved. This always breaks Michael up.
Is that a typical story, Agnes, do you think? I mean, do you think?
Well, I don't know. They're more alike than unlike, but there is a lot of dissimilarity too. Now, I drank something like Jane, but I drank longer, and mine was more of a slow process. I would say that alcohol is a very sly, powerful, and baffling liquid. It creeps up on some people very slow. Now, I started out drinking very young, not real heavy, but I liked the feel that it gave me. That's what I really liked about it. And I liked that right up to the point where it started to give me, instead of a lift, I got a depressed feeling, and that's when that was on the downward path of my drinking. When I started out, I loved it. It gave me a real great feeling. I was sort of shy, bashful, so when I'd have a few drinks and go out with the crowd, I was the life of the party, and I loved that feeling. So for a long, long time, you know, this was my thing.
Yeah.
When you
great.
reach your peak, do you still get drunk? Do you?
Well, you never know, Sandy. Sometimes you're in a blackout. And I never knew what a blackout meant till it was defined. I
What
always
does it
thought it was
mean?
This is a
passing
good
out.
thing.
What does it mean?
You're walking, you don't remember the next day what you did the night before. You might be in a blackout for 2 hours. This is something that you drink to the point where your senses become numb. You just, there's nothing. It's just like a dark curtain. Sometimes you never remember what you did. Sometimes snatches of it might come back to you.
Sometimes it's probably a good thing.
You
Right?
function normally. You know,
Yeah.
nobody could tell that
Right,
you're in a
and
blackout,
people-
but you can't
You did your
remember.
housework every day. You took care of your children.
A lot of times I didn't remember how I fixed supper.
But you did
how-
do it.
But
then.
I did do it.
Of course, that's the big warning sign, you know, that a person is in the process of becoming addicted to the drug alcohol. For the first time when this blackout occurs, and I think if more people were aware of that as soon as a person experiences this blackout, and it's not passing out, and someone
No.
could be with you the night when you were drinking, and they would narrate the fact that you did everything relatively normal, and you didn't fall asleep, you didn't do any stupid things, but you just
Then they
can't
wouldn't
recall what
realize
happened.
that you had blacked out
No.
the person
No.
with you.
Right, because you don't black out the time. It's only the next day you can't remember what happened. And that's the big warning sign, I call it the flashing red light, that a person's in the process of becoming physically addicted to alcohol.
Were you married at the time?
No, I was never married, Sandy. Alcohol was the most important thing in my life for a good many years, and it became such a necessity. I realize now, I didn't know it at the time, as I say, it crept up on me slower than it did on Jane. I was able to go out socially and drink very heavy and not be a daily drinker, but always look forward to having drinks. I didn't want to go any place where they weren't serving drinks. I didn't want to go to a show unless I had could look forward to drinking after or before. I just didn't want a dry evening. I always wanted drinks. And then I noticed that I was drinking at home because I had it put me to sleep. I used to say, well, I can always relax and sleep better when I have a few drinks.
Mm-hmm.
So this was my excuse. I started to make excuses. Now, when a person starts to make excuses for their drinking, now this is the red light.
Right.
I knew I was doing wrong because I was excusing my behavior. I mightn't be drunk, but I was sure high when I went to bed. And I found out that if I had a few drinks at night, I had more pep to do things that I normally hated to do, like ironing or dusting or something like that. You'd be surprised, a couple of drinks and you'd flash right through it. So this is when you become dependent on this. So the next time you dust, you want a couple of drinks. You don't realize that you're getting so that you don't want to do anything without those few drinks because they make the chore seem easier at the time. But then when you start having a few drinks before you go out in company, so you can have a little, you get a start on somebody else, and that's when I started to realize that I needed it.
Yeah.
I started carrying it with me when I went someplace because the drinks weren't coming fast enough for me. Everybody else was drinking their drink, and mine was a couple of ice cubes, and I kept looking, thinking somebody would take the hint. So I got wise and started carrying my own bottle in my
In your purse?
Mm-hmm.
So then I'd go to the ladies' room and I'd have my extra drink, and this worked real good. But the people with me would wonder how I was becoming so high on the few drinks I'd have.
Jane, you told me that you didn't like to go to parties after a while.
No, after a while I didn't because the drinks weren't coming fast enough. So I used to make the parties in my home.
You didn't think of carrying it in your purse,
No.
did you? I should have known you then.
I do
Didn't have
know
a big
that
enough purse.
we used to play cards with our neighbors, and I had maybe one bottle of beer. And of course, they didn't know that upstairs I had a bottle, in my dresser. They couldn't understand how I got bombed on just one bottle of beer, but of course I made many trips upstairs to check on the kids.
Jane had a lot of problems with her battles. When I
Yeah.
started drinking, becoming a closet drinker, as women are called, that have it, well, they do have it hidden in the closets, but I used to have problems with my battles, too. I talked to a person that didn't have any problems with their battles. When she'd have her battles delivered from the store, she'd give the store owner her empties. That was great. But I used to carry mine to work and deposit them in a big incinerator there. You couldn't put them in your own garbage can because the people in the house would know it was you that was drinking that because you got this terrible guilty feeling. Now, they mightn't have been thinking this at all. But you see, back in your mind, you're doing something that isn't right, that this isn't normal for women to drink alone, to have to get high to be able to do the normal things that other people can do, and that you have to go to sleep. You have to have a few drinks to put you to sleep. These are the excuses we make when we find we're drinking to excess.
And you were really afraid of discovery, weren't you?
Yes.
You get very afraid, and you get very sly. You'd be surprised where you hide the bottles. I'm still finding some bottles up in the attic, but I keep to myself. But really, you have to find these places.
Jane, how do you think your kids were affected by all this? You had two children at the time,
Three.
right? Three.
Yeah, 9, 7, and 4. Well, my oldest understood. He knew, I don't say he understood, but he knew that I was drinking. I thought I kept it pretty well hidden, but he had caught me on several occasions drinking. And now, after, my mind cleared up, I remembered that I did tell him that I had a stomach problem, and this was my medicine, and this kept him quiet for a while. They were very confused. They were very unhappy. Of course, my husband and I were constantly arguing. I used to pick fights with him to give me excuses to drink.
Mm-hmm.
And there was constant turmoil. When I did finally admit that I had a problem, now I'm not saying I admitted I was an alcoholic, I admitted that I had a problem and came to AA, we explained to them what we knew, what I had learned, just that little bit, that alcoholism is a disease, and that their mother was sick, and that she'd have to go to meetings, and it would take a while for her to get better. And they did accept this. And, of course, the power of example, they see now that I am a member of AA. They know this. They have attended meetings with me.
Mm-hmm.
And the word alcoholic is an everyday thing. I mean, it's not...
Sandy, one of the things that Jane is mentioning now about alcoholism being a disease is a very, very important concept that the community at large has to be aware of. That an alcoholic is someone who is ill. And some of the things both of you were saying previously about doing things you knew that they were not right. But once you get into a certain stage of addiction, and I would say, in a sense, you have no responsibility. The alcohol has clouded your judgment so much,
Right.
has befuddled your emotions so much that the responsibility is really diminished very, very much. And I think if people at large could recognize the fact that alcoholism is a disease and is to be treated as a disease, then we'd be in the process of overcoming this rather stupid social stigma attached to the word. Not advocating heavy drinking or anything like that, but
You know
what I'm
what they
advocating is real
define as
tolerance.
something, Mike, like it's a mental obsession coupled with a physical allergy. That's what it's
Right.
defined as.
Right, yeah. But it's
You have an obsession and you're allergic to it.
Yeah.
And this obsession, this compulsion, you don't realize it till after you're into it, that you have to have a drink to function.
Yeah. And most people do not realize, I think that the majority of people, if I might just throw this out and see what Agnes and Jane think of it, I think the majority of people drink very irresponsibly, that they don't know what effect it's having on their body or on their emotions. I'm just wondering whether, say when you were younger, whether, say, in the schools or what have you, if it was explained to you that it is relatively easy to become dependent and then addicted to alcohol. If this had been done, whether you would have become addicted, whether you could have
Well, I
judged
think
for
you
yourself at
become
an
more
early
aware
stage.
of
I would
what you're
become,
doing.
yeah, you would
Yeah.
become more aware of it.
Yeah,
And some of these signals, like you said, red lights, would, if you'd have a blackout or if you would see that you're drinking at a certain time each day, there would be a little warning bell saying, well, maybe I better stop. Am I being too dependent on it? Am I using it as a crutch?
yeah. What are some of the reasons, if I might ask, some of the reasons women, say, drink at large, that you would judge would be, they're putting themselves in danger of becoming addicted to alcohol? Some of the social reasons or the personal reasons where women might drink
One of
too
the
much.
reasons that I mentioned before was it makes you more outgoing. A shy person feels more relaxed, so just like we're sitting here talking now and we're relaxed, well, some people find it very hard to go out socially till they have a few drinks. So I think that's one of the reasons. It's the more relaxed feeling
It's
the
a real
person has.
mood-changing drug.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does work on your emotions. It either makes you real happy, and sometimes
Yeah.
it makes
Very
people
deep.
very slap happy or
Yeah.
very angry. It all depends on the person.
Yeah, yeah.
But I
What's the
think
thing
that's
that
one of the
helped you
reasons.
most, do you think? I mean, the one thing after you, realized you had a problem, what helped you most?
What helped me most, I would say, being with people that understood my problem. And when I joined
Had the same
AA, I'd say that was what helped me the most. Because it's a very philosophical thing. You sit down and talk to a person that has the same problem as you do, and you can talk for hours and really enjoy talking about it, because then you don't feel as though that you were so different.
Yeah, that's an important point, Sandy. Every alcoholic that I have spoken to or counseled or been involved in any way or another actually articulates this point, that they feel as if they are the loneliest person in the world. And in a sense they are,
Yes.
because no one knows what they're going through. No one is aware, as they are aware, that they're really following things up and not being responsible for it.
Or what if you realize you have a problem, or you know someone who has a problem? What can you do for them?
There isn't much you can do for a person. All you can tell them is what it did to you. You can't tell them what it's going to do to them. You just merely suggest. Power of suggestion might
Yeah.
help, but
I would
you can't. I think social drinking is great if people can drink socially. But
if they
I
need a
think
drink to be sociable, they're in trouble.
no,
Yes.
right. That's right.
Right.
Yeah. And if they need more than one or two drinks,
Yeah.
I would
to
go-
have a gay evening, I'd say.
Yeah, I would even go a little farther than that. I would say more than a suggestion, a very, very strong suggestion. I think since an alcoholic is so slow to admit he does have a problem, unless a real crisis is he meets, I think to confront that person as strongly as possible.
And
but
say
in
you have a problem?
Right, but in confronting, never reject. Because I say the alcoholic feels intensely isolated, intensely lonely. So if a person who feels that, a member of their family, a close friend, has a problem, confrontation, but no rejection. It's a matter of the truth based on affection and love.
This is the problem with women who drink at home, like housewives. they're protected alcoholics. Their husbands don't want anybody to know. Their family don't want anybody to know, so they protect them.
Right.
And I think this is hurting them very much.
Or I've seen cases where husbands put this in the back of their mind. They see their wife has a problem, but they just say, well, tomorrow she might be able to handle it.
Yeah.
You know, they just don't take the drink out of the house or help them in any way. They just let them carry on and hope maybe they need a drinking companion or something. But I've seen cases where nobody helps this person.
Which goes back to the point that alcoholism is a disease.
Right.
And it's to be treated
Yeah.
as such.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in a sense, kindness or covering up does no good for the alcoholic.
No,
It just
you
prolongs the
foster
time
it.
when ruin comes. True.
But I would say that a person that tries to stop drinking alone, that don't have somebody to talk to about their problem, because it is an emotional problem. And with emotional problems, you do have to talk it over with somebody else to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get it off your chest. So that's why it's so great to have somebody that understands your problem. Now, a husband might sit down and listen to everything that you do and why you did it. But somebody that's been there understands it more. And they can relate with you. And that's what makes it so great, relating to one another.
Right.
That you don't feel as though that you're alone. It really is a great thing.
I'd like to ask you one, quick question. Are there differences between the male and female alcoholic? Are the facilities equal? Is the rehabilitation program equal?
Unfortunate. While there is a growing number of facilities for the alcoholic, both medical and psychological, the facility for the female is lagging behind. Many areas have nothing for the female alcoholic. They're beginning to come around, but it's a sad state of affairs. It's only gradually that our entire society is waking up to the fact that this is a problem, and society has to address itself to the problem. So facilities for the female are wanting in most instances.
I know, because at one point you said that you felt that there were not enough facilities for the female alcoholic.
Right, well, in this area, there is no facility per se for the female alcoholic. We're in the process of trying to get something going. But there's nothing right now. There's no center or facility where the female can go for rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Agnes. Good night, and thank you for watching.